The planet is shaken by a terrible roar. Naples is wiped off the face of the Earth. The air in Europe is filled with sulfur that poisons all life. Traffic is paralyzed. The streets of San Francisco and Los Angeles are littered with drifts of volcanic ash. The west coast of the United States has been turned into a dead zone. This isn't the result of a nuclear bomb explosion. The Third World War hasn't started. An asteroid hasn't fallen on the planet. Two of the most famous supervolcanoes in the world are the Phlegraean Fields and Yellowstone caldera. When they explode, life on Earth will never be the same again. Any active volcano such as the Sangay volcano in Ecuador can cause disaster and leads to thousands of victims. But a supervolcano is much more powerful and extremely dangerous. If you compare it with a regular one, it's like a rocket launcher next to a simple gun. A supervolcano doesn't erupt, it explodes. And this explosion exceeds the power of ordinary volcanic eruptions by several thousand times. Most of the Phlegraean Fields are underwater and are located northwest of Naples. This is a region above a huge magma reservoir with an area of 400 square kilometers. The explosion of such a supervolcano would release energy comparable to the explosion of 2,700 bombs. That's 158,000 megatons. As a result, a cavity will form on the surface of the water, in the center of which a giant water column will appear. If collapses, it would create a wave more than 30 meters or 98 feet tall, which is about the height of the famous statue of Christ the Redeemer in Rio de Janeiro. Without its pedestal, the wave could overcome the Gulf of Naples in just 15 minutes and washes away the city completely. That's about 1 million people who will die instantly. But that's not all. The air in Europe would be filled with sulfur particles that would poison all living beings. The sulfur would make it difficult to breathe. As a result of the mega eruption, about 500 cubic kilometers, or about 120 cubic miles of solid particles could be released into the atmosphere. It would be mostly ash which wouldn't melt by itself like snow. It will clog the respiratory system as well as disable various mechanical systems. You probably wouldn't be able to just get in a car and drive away from the effects of the eruption. Your car wouldn't work anymore. But much more dangerous would be the ash left in the atmosphere blocking the sun rays. It will lead to a volcanic winter. Most likely the temperature would fall by 5 to 6 degrees Celsius, that's 9 to 11 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is much more serious than it seems. At first glance also, an eruption could cause a rise in the level of the world's ocean by 140 centimeters or 55 inches. Coastal cities and agricultural areas would be flooded. Venice will go underwater like the mythical Atlantis, and with it, Amsterdam and Hong Kong. This sounds like a real apocalypse, though the Phlegraean Fields are currently behaving calmly. But to date, enough magma has accumulated under the supervolcano for an extremely powerful eruption. In just a few months, magma has risen to 3 kilometers or 1.8 miles from the Earth's surface, and its movement continues. The catastrophe is getting closer, but this giant isn't the worst natural time bomb of all. The Yellowstone's caldera is located in the northwestern United States. Its volcanologists, who have been measuring this activity since 1923, say the ground rose about 25 centimeters (0.8 inches) between 2004 and 2009. However, in 2010, the land began to subside. The period of slow, steady rise has many scientists wondering whether Yellowstone might erupt in the near future. And if it does, there is concern about how intense that eruption may be. The big question is, if Yellowstone started shaking tomorrow, what is there to expect, says Dr. Steve Anderson, a volcanologist and earth sciences professor at the University of Northern Colorado. The explosion of the Yellowstone caldera will be about 2,500 times more powerful than the eruption of the notorious 1980 Mount St. Helens. In terms of power, this would be comparable to almost 5 times the blast of the Phlegraean Fields. The explosion will shoot out streams of red-hot magma to a height of more than 50 kilometers or 31 miles and be accompanied by an extreme powerful earthquake. It will be felt in all parts of the world. In the first minutes after the start of this disaster, all life within a radius of more than 700 kilometers or 435 miles will be destroyed. The states of Idaho, Wyoming, and Montana will cease to exist. Utah, Nevada, and Colorado would also be affected, most of them from suffocation and hydrosulfide poisoning. The entire west coast of the United States will be covered with volcanic ash and turn into a dead zone. Most likely 3 or 4 hours after the Yellowstone disaster, dozens or even hundreds of volcanoes around the world would begin erupting. The eruptions would cause a tsunami up to 40 meters, that's up to 130 feet, which washes away every Pacific and Atlantic coastal cities such as Los Angeles and New York. This great disaster will lead to the partial extinction of humanity within a day. Acid rain would begin pouring over the entire North American continent, which would destroy most of the vegetation. Volcanic emissions would lead to the formation of an ozone hole over the mainland and give access to solar radiation. It will take 2 to 3 weeks for clouds of ash to cross the Atlantic and Pacific. Within a month, the ash clouds will block the sun from the entire Earth. The temperature of the atmosphere will drop by about 11 degrees Celsius or almost 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Severe earthquakes will disable most of the pipelines, power lines, and railways. In total, more than 2 billion people would die as a result of the cataclysm, the duration of the volcanic winter. If scientists won't interfere, there will be changes in the climate and the usual way of life in less than 4 years. Humans will have to learn to survive, and there's no guarantee we would succeed. We are getting into the time period where it is becoming more unstable, says Anderson. For today, Yellowstone still sleeps, but scientists are checking its every hiccup or cough in an effort to predict its next move. While the brewing force beneath the park has been restrained for thousands of years, Yellowstone's dormancy does not mean it will not one day awaken. What are your thoughts on these unpredictable giants? Leave a comment below.